Now, Bitcoin isn't the only cryptocurrency, actually. There's 140 plus. Now, there's the DogeCoin. DogeCoin was created by Jackson Palmer, and it's not so mysterious like Satoshi Nakamoto. You know, he's just an engineer. And DogeCoin started with the Doge meme. Now here's a few pictures. They became viral, pretty much. And somebody said that, well, why don't we make a new cryptocurrency from this? So by the end of 2013, they created the DogeCoin, and it's been very popular. It's going up in worth and in popularity. I think it could be the next cryptocurrency, the next Bitcoin. Now, here are the 5 most popular cryptocurrencies on CoinMarketCap.com. It's a place that any of you can go to. Now, the first is Bitcoin, second is Ripple, third is Litecoin, fourth is Purecoin, and fifth is DogeCoin. Now, just recently, like yesterday, a new coin, it came into 4th place. Sorry, I don't have it. It's called Israel Coin. Like, it was created on Tuesday, and I discovered it just yesterday. And it went up 800% in worth. So that's why we couldn't bring the rest of the mining equipment. Now, this currency is very promising. Actually, even Dr. Ben Bernanke, he's a former chair of the Federal Reserve, he said pretty much that this currency has promise, and he made the Bitcoin popular by saying that it skyrocketed to 1,000 for 1 Bitcoin after he said this quote. And basically what's so good about it is no one controls it. It's decentralized, and it's pretty much for the people, and it's by the people. Because now, our dollar is based on the Federal Reserve, which they can just print, you know, say, I want $1,000 in my banking account. But here, it doesn't work that way. No one controls it. It's decentralized. So that's the main promise and why this could be the next currency. Now, why I also believe this should be the next currency is even Albert Einstein. He said that the hardest thing to understand in the world is income taxes. Now, if he doesn't understand how our monetary system works, how are we? That is why I believe that this currency should be the next currency that we use in the United States. And, ladies and gentlemen, there is one last thing I'd like to tell you about. I've been thinking about this for a few weeks, but I think that in 2020, Aaron Romero. So we need to go back to the country that our founding fathers promised. It's coming, and you can make a change.
Back. Everybody hear me? All right, great. So I'm usually very high energy, but I've spent the last 3 days really enjoying this conference a lot. And I am exhausted. I'm sure many of you are too. So you'll forgive me if this is not my usual high energy presentation. I've been thinking for 2 days about what I'm going to talk about during this keynote. I left it purposely vague because I like to try to assimilate some of the ideas that come from the conference as I experience it and try to put it together into a bit of a narrative. This is going to be a bit more of a philosophical talk about the future of cryptocurrencies and what I've learned here at this event. So first of all, thank you all for coming. I think this has been a spectacular event. I had a lot of fun. If you come to this event, it's called the Bitcoin Expo 2014. It might have been called the Bitcoin and Ethereum Expo 2014. I don't know if you noticed, Ethereum had a pretty big presence here. And an interesting question comes up, which is, actually quite a few people ask me, does Ethereum threaten the future of Bitcoin? Does it steal some of its thunder? And that's a question that I've heard several times, and I've heard people refer to that issue in trying to understand altcoins and wondering whether the altcoins essentially threaten the dominance of Bitcoin, or if they make Bitcoin weaker, or if they distribute the value of the network too broadly. I've been thinking about this question for quite a while. And I think fundamentally, it's a question that evokes the old paradigm of currencies. We've all grown up in a world where currencies are forced upon us in a monopolistic fashion, where currencies are defined strictly by the geographies in which they occur, and where the choice of currency is not yours. It is an accident of birth, just like many other things in our lives. As an accident of birth, I was born into an upper middle class family in Greece, fully loaded with the lottery of privilege in my life. And I also acquired the drachma. I didn't choose the drachma. It happened to me, any more than I choose to be a white male, any more than I choose to be born into a family of educated people. Those things simply happen to me. Currency, as we understand it, is an artifact of the nation state, and it imposes upon us certain constraints. We don't choose our currency, it chooses us. And we are forced to use that currency in all of our interactions. We don't have a choice. Until 2008, that is. And so now we live in a slightly different world. But a lot of the old paradigm still persists in our thinking. In a world where your currency is a monopolistic nation-state artifact that is constrained by geography, it's a zero-sum game. The currency is the flag, is the nation-state. It is the expression of the economic value of your state, and it defines your interactions in a world of geopolitics, in a global struggle for domination among nations. It's not up to individual choice. It has nothing to do with the individual, except for that one individual whose face is on the currency. You know, up to recently here in Canada, some old white lady called Elizabeth. And that's the only person who really has control over the currency. And now we live in a new world, a world in which currency is a choice. And not just a choice in terms of use. It's not just a matter of being able to choose which currency we use as individuals, but it's also a means of expression. This is one of the things that crystallized in my mind a few months ago as I thought about the evolution of altcurrencies, as they're called. If you haven't seen it, there's a website called coingen.io, and it allows you to use a web form to create a currency. Up to that point, I was thinking, how many currencies will there be? How many altcoins will there be? And how will altcoins compete in a world of cryptocurrencies as we move into the future? Will there be hundreds of altcoins? And if there are hundreds of altcoins, what does that mean for the value of each of the altcoins? How do they compete? And that was the wrong way of thinking about it. Because I saw currency as a zero-sum game, just like it had been imposed in my worldview from the nation states that created currency. And then I started thinking of currency as an application, and then I started thinking of currency as a means of expression. You see, money, at the very root of it, is a language. It's a language we use to express value to each other. When I give you a dollar bill, I am saying that I want to hand you the equivalent value. I'm communicating my desire to exchange value with you because I appreciate something you can do or something you can give to me. So I'm using this as a token of language. And this thing happens in human societies whether you have currency or not. And if you don't have a currency with a stamped face on it, you invent it. And you can see this. One of the things that really captivated me was understanding that if you have a primary school environment and you watch children in their natural habitat, a very unnatural habitat in most schools, but in any case, they don't have currency. Young children don't have currency, and they don't understand currency, so what they do is they invent currency. They start trading rubber bands, Pokemon cards, Tamagotchi, tokens of affection, tokens of popularity. Humans create currency as a means of expressing their desires, of expressing their individuality. So I thought, what happens when a 5-year-old in a primary school can use a website to create Joey Coin, to compete against Maria Coin in a game of popularity within their school? And then it dawned on me. To ask the question, how many currencies will exist, is equivalent to ask the question, how many bloggers will there be on the internet? And the answer is simple: all of us. Currency is now a means of expression. But if everyone can create a currency, how does it derive value, and what does it mean? What is the difference between currency as an expression of popularity, as an expression of desire, as a meme, a fad, a brand? Down there right now, Canadian Teen Idol is running. One of those contestants, Amar, has a big fan group. Maybe he wants to create Amar Coin so that his fans can express their desire to watch more of his dancing. Why not? People have talked about me doing Andreas Coin. I think it's a bit silly, but why not? I think at some point we're going to see things like that happen. So we're not going to have hundreds of altcoins. We're not going to have thousands of altcoins. We're going to have hundreds of thousands, and then millions of altcoins. And then there'll be thousands of altcoins being created every day to organize local communities, to express bands, to create popularity contests for short term, for fads, to codify the latest internet meme, to create the latest fad. How the hell do you tell which ones have value and which ones don't have value? That's a very different world from the one we live in today. And I'm looking for parallels to understand what this means, and I often go back to looking at the emergence of the first decentralized system in my lifetime, the internet, and what it did for understanding information, information scarcity, opinion, and authority of opinion, and what it did to us as a society as the internet emerged into our global scene. So there used to be a time that if you wanted to read authoritative opinion, you bought a piece of paper from an organization that had a printing press that was 3 stories high and 4 football fields long and had a really great name like the New York Times. And that organization could buy ink by the barrel. And through that ownership of this enormous manufacturing facility, they had the weight of authority. And so we imbued authority into these institutions, and we used that authority to decide which opinions mattered and which opinions didn't. We used them as gatekeepers of authority to give us guidance in understanding opinion. And then the internet destroyed all of that, because suddenly anyone could print and anyone could publish. And I remember in the early days, people talked about, well, how the hell will we know which opinions matter if anyone can have an opinion? The world will come to an end, surely. A funny thing happened. We shifted from a world in which authority of opinion came from the issuer, from the authority of the publisher by proxy, into a world where we had to look at opinion on its own merits, on the content of that opinion. And we arrived at a world where Judith Miller of the New York Times prints bullshit that sends an entire nation into war, and an Egyptian blogger on the front lines of a revolution prints the truth that nobody wants to hear. And suddenly the world is upside down. Authority is no longer the person who owns the printing press, but it is now the person who has the content that matters. And we just did this to currency. Because now the authority is not derived from the sovereignty of the issuer, from the printing press of a nation state that can declare through monopoly and use of force that this is the currency you will use. Now we can choose currency, and a 5-year-old can create currency. And maybe the currency that the 5-year-old created has monetary value. Maybe it doesn't. Most likely it doesn't. Some will. And so we need to get used to a world where we have to judge currency not by who issued it, but by who uses it. Or rather, how many people use it and what they use it for. So let's imagine a world in which currency is being used in a widespread fashion, and no one remembers who created the currency or why. They only know that within their local community, it has purchasing power. As a little fanciful thought, imagine a decade from now in a rural village, far detached from our developed nation civilization, villagers exchanging two currencies, one that has a Shiba Inu, a Japanese breed of dog, on the front, and is pronounced DogeCoin or DogeCoin or DogCoin, and I'm not quite sure, but it doesn't really matter. But you can buy half a dozen eggs with it. And other villages are trading another currency that has an old white lady called Elizabeth on it. And they have no idea who Elizabeth is. And they don't know why she got her picture on the coin. Maybe she wrote a nice song. Maybe she won Canadian Teen Idol. Nobody remembers anymore, but you can buy 6 eggs with it. And to those people, it doesn't matter who issued the currency. What matters is whether it has purchasing power or not. The currency is now evaluated purely on its monetary basis because of adoption, because of use. And there is one fundamental difference between those two currencies. One has a predictable, stable, algorithmic monetary supply, and the other has an old white lady called Elizabeth on it. So, in fact, one of them has some real intrinsic value because it's removed some of the uncertainty of the monetary system from it. The other one doesn't really. We need to get ready to live in a world where multiple currencies will coexist. So currency as a means of expression, currency as a tool of language, is no longer up to the issuer. It is up to us as individuals making a choice to use that currency, and we give it value through our use. We give it value through adoption. And we will be surprised by some of the currencies that will emerge from a fad, that will emerge from a joke, perhaps even a sick joke, and will explode into viral consciousness on the internet and then become real monetary powers in use across a broad population, surprising all of us. How the hell do we operate in that kind of world? And what does it mean to have competition between currencies if there are millions? If digital scarcity really applies, but only on a local basis and only within the context of each one of these currencies, if scarcity is not derived from the issuer, but is derived in terms of adoption and in terms of the token itself, we're going to have currencies for different uses. Already, you have Bitcoin that provides a very specific monetary policy. You have Ethereum that can provide a contract platform. There's Namecoin for distributed naming conventions. And there's many others, and there will be many others that will solve other problems. Protein folding, search for extraterrestrial life. Maybe we'll have currencies that are better for microtransactions and micropayments with very fast resolution. Maybe we'll have currencies that are better for larger transactions like real estate. Who knows? If you think as currency as an application, then you realize that it doesn't really matter. On the internet, email was the granddaddy of them all, or the grandma of them all. And email, like Bitcoin, was the killer app that allowed us all to see the power of decentralized communications and adopt this new platform. And it was enough to create utility to spread this network all around the world. But it was only the first app. And then instant messaging, and forums, and bulletin boards, and Facebook, and Twitter. Do you worry that Twitter will destroy email? Do you worry that Facebook will destroy instant messaging? Do you worry that the value of email is eroded somehow by the existence of Twitter? We don't worry about these things because we understand that each one serves a different purpose. Some allow us to express a modality of instantaneous real-time communications. Some allow us to have asymmetric communications, where using Twitter, I can address an audience of thousands and receive real-time feedback without having to have a bidirectional synchronous communication. Some, like email, allow us to have more long-term asynchronous communication between people. And what we do is we build interfaces. We build abstractions. We build unifying tools that allow us to use all of these modalities from a single interface and fluidly move from one to the other so that we can start transmitting a short text message to someone, get into a conversation, convert that to an audio conversation, decide that we want to show them our dog, turn on the video camera, convert it into a video conference, and when we're finished with the conversation, follow up with an email to summarize what we agreed on. And now we've gone through 5 different modalities of communication in a single unified interface. I think that's what's going to happen with currency. We're going to start treating currency as an application, and in order to do that, we're going to need interfaces that allow us a unified currency experience, that allow us to have a single wallet with perhaps 150 different currencies in it. And because of inventions like sidechains and decentralized exchanges and fluid and liquid systems, and the complete absence of monopoly, of lock-in, of hostage situations around the currency, we will be able to instantaneously and at very low cost convert from Bitcoin to Namecoin to DogeCoin to Ethereum. And if we can do that, then it doesn't matter because we won't do that. Our unified wallet interface will do that by trying to see what we're trying to achieve with our currency. If I'm buying a house, it might express my transactional will in the modality of Bitcoin because that's the most suitable currency. When I try to name the domain for that house, it will convert some to Namecoin. The contract itself will be paid for in Ether, and when I tip the bartender for the cup of coffee they gave me when I got up that morning, I'll tip them in Doge. My interface won't hide all of these differences. I can see a world in which we can smoothly move between currencies in a multimodal way. There's one other thing that comes out of this, which is the very real possibility that we will abstract value and exchange rate from the actual currency. If we have a multimodal communication system, we no longer need to look at the individual values and exchange rates of all of these commodities, or assets, or currencies, or call them whatever you want. There's a very real possibility we're going to have an index currency, a currency that is not in itself tradable, that has no intrinsic use as a transactional commodity, but instead is only used to express the purchasing power vis-a-vis the various coins in our wallet. I may have 1,000 unified currency units. You can't buy unified currency units. You can buy Bitcoin, and you can tell me how many unified currency units that is. And I price everything in unified currency units, and then I pay in Doge or Namecoin or Bitcoin or Ether, depending on how I want to use it. We already do this in financial markets. In fact, you can trade S&P 500. You're not buying a single company. What you're buying into is the aggregation of all of the different things that are in the stock market as an expression of the total value of the market. And you can then use that meta instrument in order to price transactions. For example, the London Interbank Overnight Rate is used as a meta interest rate to contractually tie things to a global set of interest rates. And so you don't need to say, I will buy this at whatever the Bundesbank says. You say, I'll buy this at Libor plus 2. And then you have a stable point of reference with which you can do transactions. I expect we're going to see much of the same with currency. We're probably going to see meta-currencies whose only purpose is to aggregate the value in all of our wallets from all of our currencies and allow us to understand value as an abstraction that exists independently of the currencies in which it's expressed. So that's a slightly philosophical perspective. And that's why I think it doesn't matter and Ether is not competing with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not competing with Litecoin. They are all means to express the transactional modality we want to use at any point in time to achieve the goals we want. With this comes a very important and powerful tool. In the choices we make with these currencies, we are also choosing to align ourselves with a community. Adoption is not simply the act of using the currency. It's also attaching oneself to a community that has also chosen to adopt that currency. When I choose to adopt Bitcoin, I am a believer in monetary policy of 21 million total coins as a stable source of value. If I choose to adopt Frycoin, I am a believer in an inflationary basis demurrage coin that has a negative interest rate that enforces consumption and discourages hoarding. I am choosing my politics through my currency. And through that choice, I am associating myself with a global community that has made the same choice as me and that is expressing that choice through currency. Just like when I choose an application on the internet to communicate with, I'm also aligning myself with the corresponding community. I don't use Twitter just because it's the convenient communication mechanism. I use Twitter because I also agree with many of the concepts and philosophies of the community of other people who choose to use Twitter. But with currency, that choice is a much more powerful political choice. We have entered the realm of metapolitics, of politics by algorithm, of the ability for global communities to form around a common consensus of politics through the choice of currency. You want inflation? Use an inflationary currency. You're a gold bug? Use a deflationary currency. You want a currency that creates a guaranteed minimum income from the poor? Use a currency that expresses that politics. You want a currency that puts aside tokens for carbon sequestration? Use a currency that expresses your green politics. We're going to start seeing communities, politics, and currencies converge and allow us to make these choices. Just like I can support Joey Coin in order to say that Joey is, in fact, the coolest kid among the 5-year-olds. I can support Green Coin because I care about global warming, or not. Right? I can support Meat Coin if I really, really like red meat. Whatever. Worldwide Wrestling Coin. No problem. There'll be one of those too. Absolutely. So really, all of these things are forms of expression. And that comes back to the original point, that currency, in the end, is really a form of language. It's a language by which we communicate our expectations and desires of value. And now that we can do it on such a massive scale, now that everyone can create currency, our choices will really matter. We're past the zero-sum game. This isn't about nation-states anymore. This isn't about who adopts Bitcoin first or who adopts cryptocurrencies first, because the internet is adopting cryptocurrencies, and the internet is the world's largest economy, most populous economy, and it is the first transnational economy, and it needs a transnational currency. To summarize, what we've really done is we've inverted the very basic and most fundamental equation of currency, which is that for millennia until the year 2008, sovereignty defined currency. Sovereignty was the basis upon which currency could be created, and that currency allowed that sovereignty to be expressed. The monopolistic control of currency is the basis of sovereignty. And now the internet has a currency, and the internet is going to use that currency to create sovereignty. After 2008, currency creates sovereignty. And the internet has its own currency, which means the internet has purchasing power, which means the internet has economic freedom, which means the internet can exert that economic freedom in a post-nationalist way, in a way that ignores borders and makes the nation-state not obsolete, but simply less relevant. Because when an Egyptian blogger can not only blog about the revolution, but also fund that revolution in Bitcoin, and they can connect with people from all around the world who share their ideals for self-determination and freedom, they are expressing their own sovereignty as an individual, and they are expressing the sovereignty of their community through the use of that currency. So this is the world we now live in, a world in which currencies can coexist, and where currency and its user adoption creates sovereignty. That's basically what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you.
En este momento el precio de Bitcoin es muy económico. At the moment the price of Bitcoin is very cheap. Pero casi todo el mundo tiene muy poco dinero para invertir. But almost everybody has very little money to invest. Debería decir que esta idea me vino hoy especialmente cuando vi otra vez una chica ahí pidiendo dinero por la calle. Actually, I must say first, this idea today I got especially when I saw again one girl begging for money in the streets. Me gustaría ayudar, pero yo tampoco me sobra mucho el dinero. I would really like to help everybody, but I don't have either too much money. And así que me vino la siguiente idea. So I got the following idea. Es más bien un juego. It's rather a game. Lo que es muy importante, elegir un monedero de Bitcoin que solo tú misma tienes la llave privada. What is very important to choose Bitcoin wallet company which you only possess the private key. For example, Blockchain.info. Por ejemplo, la empresa Blockchain.info. Luego, imprimir en papel la llave privada y también guardarlo tú mismo. Then to print in paper the private key and of course save for yourself that private key. Bueno, ya estamos imprimiendo, imprime por lo menos 10. So now we are already printing, so at least print 10 directions, 10 direcciones. Luego pones algo de Bitcoin, una cantidad, lo que te da la gana en esta dirección. Then you put some Bitcoin, the amount, whatever you want, and that in these directions. Y la próxima vez que sales de casa ya tienes algo que dar a los que están ahí pidiendo por la calle. And the next time you go out of the house, you have already something to give for these people who are begging on the streets. Y por ejemplo, y claro, para tus amigos, amigas, and for your friends, of course. Eso da motivación a la gente para aprender Bitcoin y this gives motivation for the people to learn about Bitcoin. Y la parte del juego consiste en lo siguiente, and the game part consists in the following. Explicas a la gente, mira, esta es la clave privada, que es la clave secreta. you explain to the people, look, this is the private key, which must be secret, and you have it, and me, and explicas, esa persona y yo mismo la tiene. Y antes pensaba en 5 años, pero luego cambié un poco de idea de hasta 4 años. First, I thought of 5 years, but then I changed my opinion to 4 years. Later, explain. Después lo explico por qué. Les dices, mira, tienes 4 años para poner esta cantidad de Bitcoin a otra dirección. Si no lo has quitado después de 4 años, yo lo quito. So you explain them, you have 4 years to take these Bitcoin out of this direction, of this secret key direction. If you don't do it, I do it after these 4 years, so you lose this. That's this part of the game, es la parte del juego. He creado este hashtag BTC4 para hacerlo un poco popular. I created this hashtag BTC4 to make it a little popular. Antes pensaba en 5 años, pero luego cambié a 4 porque te has dado cuenta que en Los Simpson la gente tiene 4 dedos y solo Dios tiene 5 dedos. First, I thought of 5 years, but then I changed my mind to 4 years. Did you notice that in The Simpsons, people have 4 fingers and only God has 5 fingers? I'll show some pictures. Voy a enseñar algunas imágenes de Los Simpsons, de los manos y dedos de Simpsons. Some pictures of the hands and fingers of Simpsons. Pero antes quiero recordar que es muy probable que en también 4 o 5 en los próximos años el valor de Bitcoin puede subir mucho. Just want to remember before that the price of Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin can rise very much in these next years. Así que si solo pones una cantidad pequeña, más tarde puede ser de gran ayuda. Even if you just put a little small amount, later it can be big help. No solo para, bueno, es un juego. Si la persona lo quita antes de 4 años, es para esta persona, si no, es para ti, si te recuerdas y guardas bien la llave privada. So this is the game part. If the person takes the money out, it's for that person. But if they forget it after these 4 years, you can take it out. And it can be really...
Bueno, imprimir también la llave pública y la llave privada. Y si, por ejemplo, okay, first translate. Print not just the private key, but also the public key. Así que si, por ejemplo, explicas a la gente, mira, si alguna persona quiere enviarte Bitcoin, pero tú no tienes ninguna dirección, así que puedes dar esta llave pública a la persona. Mira, muy bien, la llave pública, no la llave secreta. das a esa persona o cualquier persona y te pueden enviar Bitcoin a esa dirección. So remember, the public key you can give to anybody, and if somebody wants to send you some Bitcoin and this person doesn't have any, so you have already this public address where they can send you Bitcoin.
¿Qué es Bitcoin? Bitcoin es la primera moneda digital descentralizada. Los Bitcoins son monedas digitales que puedes enviar a través de Internet. Comparado con otras alternativas, Bitcoin tiene numerosas ventajas. Los Bitcoins son transferidos directamente de persona a persona a través de la red sin pasar por un banco u otro intermediario. Esto significa que las comisiones son mucho menores, puedes usarlo en cualquier país, tu cuenta no puede ser congelada y no hay prerequisitos o límites arbitrarios. Miremos cómo funciona. Los Bitcoins son generados en todo Internet por cualquiera con un programa gratuito llamado minero de Bitcoin. Crear Bitcoins requiere una cierta cantidad de trabajo para cada bloque de monedas. Esta cantidad se ajusta automáticamente por la red para que los Bitcoins siempre sean creados a un ratio predecible y limitado. Tus Bitcoins se guardan en tu billetera digital, que te resultará familiar si usas banca digital. Cuando transfieres Bitcoins, una firma electrónica es añadida. Pasados unos minutos, la transacción es verificada por el minero y es almacenada permanente y anónimamente por la red. El software de Bitcoin es completamente abierto y cualquiera puede revisar el código. Bitcoin está cambiando las finanzas de la misma manera que la web ha cambiado el periodismo. Cuando cualquiera tiene acceso al mercado global, florecen grandes ideas. Miremos algunos ejemplos de cómo los Bitcoins están usándose hoy en día. Puedes comprar videojuegos, regalos, libros, servidores y calcetines de alpaca. Existen varias casas de cambio donde puedes intercambiar tus Bitcoins por dólares, euros y más. Los Bitcoins son una gran forma para que pequeños negocios y autónomos reciban publicidad. No cuesta nada empezar a aceptarlos, no hay cargos o comisiones y recibirás negocio adicional de la economía Bitcoin. Para tus primeros Bitcoins y más información, visita weusecoins.com.
Bueno, ahora voy a enseñar algunas imágenes de los dedos de Simpsons. Now I'll show some pictures of the fingers of Simpson. The 4 fingers, los 4 dedos y 5 dedos de Dios. The 4 fingers and 5 fingers of God of Simpsons.
The 13th of March.
Right now, there are more people on the internet than there were on the planet in 1960.
We're raising money.
And it's easier to be discovered than ever before.
It takes a full team to make each one of our videos.
But the internet needs better software to help us reward one another for our work.
Advertisers value you differently. They say that 1,000 of you is only worth $6.
Any help is very much appreciated. Please fund this project. We need your help.
politically and historically opposed to secret societies, secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweigh the dangers which are cited to justify it.
Face the facts, join our hands, make a stand. It's time to gather plans, get the shot, take the chance. Till there is no one left, stay correct to the death. They can't ever break a freedom, we will never let them. The corrupt politics is killing the system. Cynicism is it, and it's everything that you witness. They tell you what to think, make you believe that they're the realness. They feed us full of lies, and yet we always forgive them. Huh? It's all conspiracy, and if you feed it into it, you're the puppet. The government's pulling strings from above you. It's time for the introduction to truth. Let's start a movement. We've all been brainwashed. They believe that we all are stupid. We believe in what we see and whatever our ears are hearing. But if you look close, listen, gather your own opinion, you'll understand all the lies, lines and what's between them. This world is not your oyster. This world is a fucking prison. Come on. What's happening in our nation? No one will stand up for the fear of assassination. So they strip us of everything. We stand there and just take it. Scared to make a stand, a false flag operation. Research Illuminati, find out by 9/11. You see they line their pockets, don't believe the lies they tell you. Find and seek the truth, realize we need to do whatever it is we can to protect our livelihood. It's time for us to prove whether conspiracy or not. They owe some explanations to the questions that we got. What are the skull and bones? What is lying beneath all these secretive meats? Got you lying between your teeth. What's with the Bilderberg and burning your effigies? I'm praying to Lucifer. How Satanist can you be? While all of the time praying you believing in the peace just to keep up appearances within Christianity. Come on. Stay strong when they try to shut us down or turn around, let us storm them. We got the warnings, let us march from the morning through the night. We gon' fight and close the eye and overthrow all these damn secret societies. Why we gotta stand for the